أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Okay. Let me start one second. Okay.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد آمين. Alhamdulillah, praise Allah. I want to welcome everybody to our program today. We're going to have a lecture on Islam and an agenda. Sheikh Amir, Khalil, Abdullahi. So without further ado, you give me the mic so he can begin his talk, inshallah.
Sure. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله. الحمد لله عدد خلقه رضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته منتهى علمه وجمع مشاعر وخلق وضرع وبرع الغيب شهادة الرحمن الرحيم المالك القدوس العزيز الحكيم وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So, inshallah, I just want to make a few and make brief points. I don't want to hold y'all real long, inshallah, but I definitely want everyone to take home, something out of this. And those who have been around for a while can testify to the fact that our deen, our Islam, not the deen in and of itself, but our practice and implementation of Islam is taking a decline. However, which also stumps the legacy and the growth, the continuity of Islam being passed down. Especially, when we're in this spotlight and for the world to begin to take us serious, is that we have to establish ourselves a legacy, have a deen with an agenda, a legacy that will empower us, because the deen empowers. If you go around the world where the world is Muslim, there's one group of people that a lot of us often forget, but they exist. And I'm talking about, when I'm saying people, I'm talking about an ethnic group of people. That's some of the people in the countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, right? Those are Asian countries, and they have a matter of fact, Indonesia is the largest Muslim populated country in the world. So how is it that you take a people that, a lot of them, their background was probably Buddhism before they embraced Islam? How is it that they take that Islam and empower them, and it works in structure and it works for them? However, with us, indigenous in America, we're kind of like a rock, and every time water passes over it, it gets wet and then it dries out, and we go back to basically where we started from again, right? and it just constantly keep coming like that, and it's time, it has to, the relevancy, there's a few things that you have to have in order to establish oneself, like you wouldn't think that, most people think that because now, like, when you're talking about people practicing Islam with madhabs and things of that nature, and the relationship with the Amr Ahl Medina or the Maliki madhab, if you will, you would think like the way people's mind is working, like it's something that just started. No, this community where I'm at right here, 1940. 1940. So it goes back, it predates the NOI, and all of those, all of those things. So, it predates that, But however, if there's not a thing, a continuity, a legacy of continuity being passed down, where you have us, in the offspring and the men and the women of that, if we're not telling our story will never be known, right? So this is something that's, is important. And Islam with an agenda. And if you look at during the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Islam, and the revelation being received, his first audience was his family, right? Then his friend Abu Bakr and Uthman, right? And then they continue to grow and grow and grow from there. So, however, it grows more so in an organic style, but you also have a public outside dawah. However, the one thing that they noticed before they actually even heard the Prophet's message was they recognized him, right? He got their attention when he was denouncing idols. He had their attention then, but he really got their attention once he started freeing slaves, right? And then the slaves started learning Islam, and they started to have a little kickback. They started kicking back, and they're like, wait a minute, hold up, what's going on here, right? So it started to change society. So people will hear you people will see you before they hear you. They see you. They don't listen to you. They listen to you after the fact, right? Even, look at it, when you in bypass, I hope brothers ain't doing this now, but those who weren't always Muslim, when you checking out a lady, what are you doing? You eyeballing her up and down. She checking you out. She looking at your shoes, your fit, you smell good, you look like you got money. You ain't gotta be rich, but you look like you got money, right? Yeah, you can't be out here holy clothes and stuff. So they're looking at you like they see you before they hear you. Some people pay attention to your actions, right? So this is what you had with Islam. The second thing that they had in Mecca is, before we ain't even talking about Medina yet. We talking about in Mecca, was that they had knowledge. They used to get together at Akram's house, and the people, they would go there. You had SubhanAllah, I forgot the Sahaba name. Him and Ali was close companions. Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, right? He used to come into Mecca and he wanted to learn what the Prophet said, learn about Islam, and it was almost like a secret society almost, right? And Ali had to walk him there, but if Ali said, if I stop and I pretend like I got to urinate, that means somebody's coming that basically would stop us, right? So they had these things in order to establish Islam. We're taking Islam for granted, right? And the identity of Islam for a lot of Americans, especially now, has become very popular. We aren't coming as humble as we should be, and this is why Allah hasn't elevated us the way we deserve, right? What do I mean by that? A lot of us are embracing Islam, and we're telling the world, but really proclaiming to Allah Ta'ala, we need a Islam for us, right? And what does that mean when they say we need Islam for us? At one point in time, I used to believe this. I used to sign into this philosophy because I used to think we were so unique and our situation was so strange and odd that, we needed scholars who understood us. But the same nonsense that we're talking about is the same nonsense that Islam changed from Mecca and all around the world, right? Example, I think it's in Bukhari, where Aisha, radiallahu ta'ala anha, she talked about the state of Mecca, even though she wasn't born, she was a little girl, real young girl. But however, she mentioned about the state of Mecca, and she mentioned about how the people would get married back in the day, right? Basically, they pretty much, some men, they would end up sleeping with the same woman, and whoever she picked for the paternity of the father, and that was it. That was claimed. That's why there was ayahs revealed about that when the women took the bay'ah. And in that bay'ah, where Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, is that you will not blame another man to be father of the child that's not father to that child. This was a common practice in Mecca. See, we don't because of our lack of connection, with that lack of knowledge, is going to bring me to another point. With that lack of connection and knowledge, and we're not understanding these things, we have a tendency to think that only these things only happen to us, which also plays in our low self-esteem, right? Our self-hatred, right? We believe that only, only thing that belongs to us as his people are like evil things, wicked things. You see us on the corners, you see this, you see that. The same jahiliyyah that affects us, it affects the other people as well, is because they're not putting that Islam in. Just like, what was it, not too far from here, Patterson, right? Y'all been to Patterson, and I've been there. I've been in jahiliyyah and Islam, and they got Arab gangs right here in New Jersey, Patterson, New Jersey. Got Arab gangs, Palestinian Bloods, right? I was locked up with Pakistanis that was Muslim, So we're not going to act like it only happens with us. It's just sensationalized by the cameras, the media, and things of that nature. And it's all part of the Fir'aunic scheme. The Fir'aunic scheme is always to make a group that's oppressed and put them at the bottom of the barrel. And so those who are oppressed just like them will oppress them too, right? So this is what you have. However, because of this kind of like this bold and attitude that we have, like we need this type of Islam for us that only understand us, right? I was watching a video a couple of days ago of Louis Farrakhan, and he was talking about when he was in Mecca, and it made me laugh because me and Amir was back here kicking it. And he was talking about how he took that mill and he ran with it. He made the Saudi government think he was Muslim, But then he gets back to America, and he in his comfort zone after he got $1 million, 1M, right? He's talking about and I told them, he said, brother, you don't wear these suits. This is what he was mimicking the Arabs I was around. Brother, you don't need to wear those. You wear the clothes of Muhammad. Wear clothes of Muhammad. And he was going on about, brother, that ain't my culture. He said they sat down, and eating out of one plate. He said they washed their hands. They were clean. But, I said, pass me the spoon, right? So arrogant, right? And some of us, we have that same attitude. And this is why, for some of us, it's not for everybody. And so when there's an agenda, an Islamic agenda, and when you look in the Bayan al-Wujud wa Hijra of Sheikh Uthman al-Fodio to Qaddamallahu bi-rahmatihi Amin, he talks about a chapter. He has a chapter, the chapter on Hijra, about the obligation of making Hijra and making separation of yourself from yourself, meaning the Muslims, and from those disbelievers. And to materialize it, to give it a little bit more materialize it, there's a book that Sheikh Muhammad Sharif put together called Zaman and Nasara. And he talked about the legacy of the Shaykh. And it was 12, Malik? 12 Amirs before the Europeans showed up in Nigeria. So you're talking about over 100 years, right? This is in the early 1800s up until 1900, right? That they didn't call them Europeans. They didn't call them, whitey or anything like that. They call them Nasara. They call them the hour of the Christian, when the Christians showed up. As a matter of fact, his name was Charles Luger, General Charles Luger. When he showed up into Nigeria, because Nigeria was an Islamic state, still is to some degree. It is an Islamic state. They showed up. The Europeans showed up. They wanted to do trade with them and things of that. And they kept coming. They didn't just show up in 1900 like, wow, we're here, now we're taking over. They've been coming since the late 1700s. While the transatlantic slave trade was going on, Sheikh Uthman and Fodio, they were also dispatching armies, fighting against people taking and ransacking, many of our ancestors, throwing them on a boat, bring them over here. So this also was going on as well. But Europeans, they were coming, they were offering gunpowder, guns, open up trade, let's do trade. And before you know it, that was enough time for them to do their homework, for lack of better words, before they made their particular move. and trying to and basically undermining the system that was set up in Nigeria. So for most of us who think that we can kind of like grow under that kind of thumb, it actually won't happen, right? And a perfect example of that is that example. Well, when they got there, the thing that stood out the most to me, it stood out, was this. It'll jump right at you if you ever read it, get a chance to read the book. One of the things that stand out is there's a Qadi. His name is Qadi Mudibu Abdul. I was looking at a brother's stat today. He was talking about one of his friends' name was Mudibu. He said Sheikh Mudibu. I was like, oh wow, I never knew African Americans carry that name. But anyway, so Mudibu Abdul to the dealing with the Nasara, the Europeans coming into Nigeria. He said there's only three ways that we can deal with them, right? He said number one is we could fight them, but they felt that they were under equipped. They felt that they didn't have the ability to do so. Then there's this thing called a sulhi. We understand what sulhi is, but it wasn't called that. What we know is the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, right? If you're familiar with that, if you're not familiar with it, look it up. That's your homework, right? The Treaty of Hudaybiyah, where the Prophet made with the Quraysh, that gave them about, what was that, 10 years? About a 10-year period, basically, it was a treaty, because at that time, the Muslims were kind of like, dogging them out, and it was going back and forth. And, with war, you need a little time to regroup. So it was strategic. So, but anyway, make a long story short, that gave the Muslims time to, re-strategize. And it was also a wisdom in that treaty, right? But it put the Muslims back on top in a victorious state. But that treaty shocked everyone, that people were, kind of like, yo, aren't we the Muslims? Aren't we the one that got, we got a law with us? Why are we making a compromise with them? But it was a strategy behind it. It was wisdom. But anyway, he said that a sulhi wouldn't work. He said because of the fact that our women and our children will be influenced by them, right? And if you look at it now, our children and our women are still being influenced, right? To this day. Men, we kind of like go with the sway, some men are solid, but to this day. And usually, I used to do buying and selling, I used to do vending and stuff, right? So we always used to say, if we get the women, we got the men. So you got the women, you got the men too. And this was back in 1900. He said our women have become, amazed with their style of dress, right? I don't know too many women that don't talk about getting a Birkin bag, MK, red bottoms, and things of that nature. The same thing that they love, right? So they're influenced by that stuff, right? So that lifestyle, it plays a part. It plays a part and it influences you. And sometimes, even if it goes against the deen. Even if it goes against the deen, sometimes we'll gravitate, the weaker ones amongst us. It's not everybody across the board. So he said that, and then he said the third thing, which was to make hijrah. Now, this was why you found people that were from the Jamaat of Sheikh Uthman ibn Fodio in their Khilafate had made migration, and their intention was to make it and go to Medina and wait for the Mahdi. Some of them stopped off at the Nile River in Nigeria. Right, and so you have some there, and some make the claim that is the true legitimate sultan of the Jamaat Sheikh Uthman ibn Fodio, while there's a sultan in Nigeria as well. And their legacy, their history of claim is that the sultan abandoned his post, and so now there's another sultan, while the other people saying, hey, nah, the Barca was with us. We got ran out of there by the British. Now, if they ran away, why would they chase them? If you got rid of the element that you think was, they need to eradicate that influence and everything all together. So this is also the same thing where you'll see and you'll find that we have to begin to take that kind of stance for ourselves, right? And I understand, like, our way of dealing with political power is to speak against them, and that's a good thing. But sometimes if you listen to the message, sometimes our message puts us in a state where we're begging. Yo, you need to teach Islam in your schools. Malcolm made a statement, rahimahullah. He said that, only a fool will allow his children to be educated by his enemy, right? And that's the same thing that happened if you look at Hitler, right? I'm a history buff a little bit. Hitler educated all of the children. That's why the Nazis took over. That's how they raised up. It wasn't the citizens in Germany, in Germany. It was their children. Their children were sending them to his schools that's influenced by them. And sometimes this also plays a contribution with why we're having the problem that we're having today with our youth. We're sending our children to intermingle with them, and we're not telling them that, and I understand, we've been we had people who, look down on us, laugh at us, make mockery of us, tell their children, don't shake hands with them because they ain't nothing but dirt and all this other stuff. But we're not telling our children that they're superior to those who worship other than Allah. And so in terms of that, they see themselves as equal. And so this is why, one of my children, they go to a summer camp in Philly, and I got a lot of kids, and so like the whole gang go to that camp. So they were like, yeah, but we had to step this boy today because he was messing with Umar, and I'm like, yeah, well, what happened? He said they were playing Blood versus Crip gang, and and they was trying to put Umar down with it, and they punched Umar, and the boy was like 12. So I rolled up on him, I threw him up in the chokehold, and then, and punched him in the stomach. And I'm like, oh, okay, enough is enough. But I immediately became enraged because I'm like, just looking for something, keep the kids busy for the summer, but then they're being invited into that nonsense. And it may have started as a gang, but it ends up being a reality eventually somewhere down the line with somebody's child. Remember we used to play cops and robbers? We used to play cowboys and Indians, but I guess that was too innocent. So when I started, it was cops and robbers. We used to play cops and robbers, and then what happened? They taught you how to be a criminal early on. We're going to break in the bank. We had a whole thing. We had a whole squad running around the project, and nobody really wanted to be the cops. Everybody wanted to be the robbers. So, these things subconsciously starts to shape our way of thinking. So anyway, so Sheikh Uthman al-Fodio, he mentions this, and he mentions about dawah and about staying in the under the jurisdiction of the disbelievers, right? And he says that if there is a hope that it one day become Darul Islam, and I'm not just talking about everybody just sitting around their fingers closed, crossed like, oh, please make America, a place of Islam. Not just like that, but actually active and working, right? Active and working. And so the couple of points that I want to mention today is a couple of ayahs and a couple of points from scholars extracted from scholars and fiqh and things of that nature. But you have to be engaged in working. And I remember that my teacher, Muhammad Sharif, I remember I went to a lecture with him down in New Brunswick. The first time I went with him in New Brunswick. And there was another lecture he gave. But anyway, he gave the same example. And he was talking about establishment, how we need to take the time out and establish the deen. And so one of the points that he made was he was like, if we don't begin to try to establish ourselves, right, and give dawah and spread dawah and teach Islam, and teach Islam properly, right? If this doesn't begin to happen, then what's going to happen is those things that we fear for our children are going to become our reality, right? He said many of us, he was talking about the immigrant community, particularly. He said that many of you all, your American dream is going to become your American nightmare, because the very thing you fear is going to be the thing that's going to become your reality. Now, this was over about 25 years ago. You ever see the second and third generation immigrant children? They just like everybody else. It's just like everybody else. And this was way back when, where you got the little soft handshake and people didn't want to slam you and things of this nature. Oh, it ain't like that now, right? It ain't like that now. So, times has changed. And this was a thing that he spoke about way back then. And so the agenda has to be, as Allah Ta'ala told us, to call the people to La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the agenda. Now, the thing is, and I'll say this and then I'll go into the points and then inshallah we'll be done. Along with that establishment, You have issues that you're going to have to deal with, but don't get sidetracked and get locked in. And that's the only thing that you're going to, that's the only thing that becomes a purpose, because what we get what I call a compartmental Islam, right? And some of the fights that you see today are fights that when I witnessed them, it was almost 30 years ago, and they probably was going on before I was even Muslim, and it probably just keep going on, and its origin probably goes back to somebody somewhere in the desert somewhere, floating on the carpet. You don't want to get stuck in fighting that fight on it's permissible to follow a method. You don't want to get stuck in that fight. It's fighting that fight way back when I was a young pup, right? We shouldn't still be carrying that on today, right? You don't want to get stuck and lost in translation on, arguing about the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? You want to teach them these things you want to teach. You don't want to get stuck there, because once you get stuck there, that becomes your fight, and you ain't thinking about anything else, nothing else. You're not thinking about anybody else's rights. That's the last thing, because why? It's almost like you have to kiss the ring in order for me to pay attention to your other needs. That's why most imams, most masters, most imams aren't really, right? Don't take this little, but take it literal. They aren't really concerned about the establishing the rights and making things easy for the people in their congregation, right? That's really an Amir. That's not the Imam. Imam al-Ratib, he just comes in and pray, lead the prayer. That's usually what most Imams do. Lead prayer, pray, lead the prayer. They got a board of directors, and the directors, they run the masjid the same way that people run a church. I used to be in the church. I grew up in the church. They run the same way in the church. As long as you got the annual anniversary, we got the E's. As long as we got the E's, you get the bouncy house, little kids. You want to put a basketball court on out in the yard for them and things of that nature. Had a little Bible study, your little Quran study on Sundays, and that is it, right? Somebody dies, it's like, well, especially if you're American, if you're at an immigrant match, you American, and somebody dies American, brother, was he Muslim? And it's the only masjid in town. What you mean is he Muslim, right? These are the things that we're up against. It's things we're up against. Then, and then if you do have a masjid for the indigenous people or inner city people, whatever term you want to use, that masjid, they always try to break up. It'd be 5 people in there. I guarantee you 2 of them going to split off. 2 of them going to split. They're going to find a reason to split. Yo, don't pray over there no more, man. They don't want. And this is what you have. This has become our Islam. Meanwhile, you got people that's coming in literally off the streets, trying to become Muslim, trying to find some sort of guidance, and then they're afraid. Why? One, we ignore them, we turn our nose up at them, right? I'll give you a short story. I swear, I tell a story. I don't know if he was there or not, Malik. The time when the brother came in, when we was on 52nd Street, and he came in drunk, and everybody's ready to toss the ball off the building, man. He came in the masjid drunk, right? I seen him. I was teaching class. I seen him. He was all the way in the back. He came in, and he was about to start praying. First he was drunk. We knew he was drunk. He smelled the liquor like from the top. He was at the top of the step to the musalla. So he come in. I'm looking at him. Nobody's paying attention. I'm trying not to be so obvious because I knew brothers were going to turn around. You know what I mean? Like, yo, what you doing? So he came in. This is the Qibla. He was facing away from the Qibla. So I was like, all right. I was like, somebody turn him around. I was like, you know what? Somebody help him go make wudu. And then as they got up to walk over there, and everybody, their mode changed. They smelled what I smelled. I was like, oh, man. I was like, it's all right, yo. He's like, man, this brother drunk. I was like, just take him, make sure he make wudu, come back. And so he continued, he proceeded on. He went to make prayer. He prayed his little prayer, his little drunk prayer. And he just broke down and just cried and cried and cried. Whatever it was that hit him and led him to come to the masjid. We ain't got nothing else, right? During the time of the Prophet they had a thing called Ahl Sufa, right? That's where Sufi come from. They were called Ahl Sufa. It was almost like a shelter. People would come to Medina and they would go in there and live. And you had different type of people. Some people had bad adab. Some of the things, the ayahs that were revealed about certain sins, stealing and things of that nature. Some of the offenses was because of some of the people that were staying there, right? Because when people come in, like imagine somebody sacrificing everything they had to come here, to learn, right? Don't have anything. And imagine if someone, they're too embarrassed, which it shouldn't be, but too embarrassed to ask for something to eat. So they stole an apple, something of that nature, right? But anyway, so these people, so when I seen him, I said, just just leave him, Quiet as kept some, probably about 4 months later, he actually came back to the masjid sober. That's the other part of the story I never tell. He actually came back to the masjid sober. So, sometimes because they're out here in this world, there ain't nothing going on. I was talking to a young boy one time, and he was telling me how he literally slept on the steps at Broad and Lehigh. Y'all know where that little bridge is right there? Lehigh, not the tall building with the stores, but across the street, it's like a little bridge. There's train tracks underneath. And that little bridge right there is little steps. He said that's where he used to live at for about 4 years. Right. So the mentality is a mentality that come along with that. You're sleeping out in the streets, bouncing from place to place. Well, the people that have the son of the Prophet, we should be feeding these people. We should be taking them blankets. Here, man, let me find some blankets. Drop them on. Even you only got 3 blankets, give it to the 3 people. And then tell them a little bit about Islam. Because that's exactly what they were doing in Mecca. They were freeing slaves or emancipating slaves, if you want to use that word. They were freeing them, buying their freedom, right? They were feeding people and things of that nature. Because after you embrace La ilaha illallah, everything you do is either going to get you paradise or hellfire, right? So feeding, taking care of the needs of others, and things that will bring brotherhood together, buying gifts for each other, praying together, and things of that nature. When you do those things, not only are you servicing yourself, but you're also serving. I mean, not only you're servicing your brother, but you're also servicing yourself with the rewards of paradise. Because in our belief, the belief of the Muslims, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we believe in what is known as the wazn al-a'mal, the scale of actions, and it's based on what is weighed, not how much, how many or how much, like a quantity, right? Not just dropping a number. Like we don't count blessings. They get weighed. Our blessings get weighed. And if that scale is heavy on the right side, then therefore that's a sign, an indication that you're going to paradise, right? If it's heavy on the left side, that's an indication you're going to spend some time in the hellfire. May Allah Ta'ala protect us all from that. So anyway, with that agenda, we have to understand that Islam actually came to help and change our situation. There's 5 things. I never paid attention to this until we studied this text. And this is a quote from Bayan al-Wujub al-Hijra. This is a statement from Sheikh Uthman al-Fodio. He said that the deen, it has a kulliyah of universals or faculties. You have 5 universals. Some say 6. Some scholars say 6. I'll mention the 5. 1, the first and foremost is preservation of deen, right? So preservation of deen not only requires you to practice it, but also, and it starts from, as the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, well, kullukum ra'in, all of you are shepherds, right? And all of you will be mas'ulin rayati. You'll be questioned about your flock. And then he goes on to mention, he says, Imam ra'in, the Imam's a shepherd. Ar-rajulu ra'in, the man is a shepherd. Right? Imam is that post, the leader, Amir. You ain't talking about the Imam leading the prayer. He is a shepherd in his own right. He leads the prayer, but he's not the top the Imam. The Amir is the top Imam, right? So the Imam, he's responsible for those people that's under him that has bay'ah, right? Now, what happens with him? He has to make sure that they're being educated. That's why I started to say that statement about imams. Most imams aren't really concerned about their people. They have to be educated. You're not teaching a new course because you get $100 per person. He's going to educate the people because they need to learn exactly what it is. You can't talk about people's recitation not being good if you have no one there to teach tajweed in order for them to recite Quran, right? So that has to be taken care of. Also, you have to have someone there that's teaching the Islamic belief. Right? Not everyone is crafty enough to extract the proper understanding of creed from the Quran. So they need a teacher, someone to teach them point by point, right? And preserve that particular belief. You have to have the teacher, you have to have someone that's going to collect the zakat. The zakat is to be collected in order. That's how you financially take care of people. It's a welfare system, right? The kuffar got welfare system from the Muslims. Did you know during the Khilafah that Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he used to walk around, him and Umar used to walk around Medina in the wintertime and knock on people and hand them blankets and things to make sure that they were warm, right? The men who were out on jihad, they would make sure that their families were taken care of. Well, we can't get that because we don't have zakat. Most of us, when we learn fiqh, sometimes we learn fiqh in order to undermine the deen. So most of us, right, the people who really this really applies to, they're exempt from this. But you have people that actually have wealth that is zakatable, right? They have businesses and their product is zakatable that will go to the Bayt'l Mall, but because of they'll say, I don't have enough. I don't have enough, so I can't pay, right? Because the imam, he would send someone like an audit. That's where IRS actually came from. The people who look at your money, they got it from Islam. They'll come and audit everything, take it, whatever, they'll take it according to that 2.5, that 2.5, divvy it up, give you back the rest that you need, and the rest goes to the Bayt'l Mall. Then people will be taken care of. Not only is it just money, but also cattle. It's about assets. It's not just about just money. It's about assets, land, certain lands. If you had animals, you make money off of agriculture. That'd be taken off. If you own mineral materials, metals, precious metals like gold and silver, there's zakat to be taken off of that. You will be able to take care of the people with the amount of wealth that we actually accumulate. It also makes you more responsible. You won't be sitting there trying to put together 2 5s in order to make a 10 to go get $3 worth of gas to go down the street, right? You'll start taking care of your money. You'll become responsible. Islam will make a man out of you, right? It'll make a whole program. Islam is that program that'll make it. If you never had that ability or had that teaching to someone to teach you how to, do things in life, Islam will give that to you, right? So Islam, it has an agenda to it. It ain't just behind just proud ritual prayers 5 a day, because that's what it's been reduced to now. And that's why people feel comfortable if they don't pray in the Jamaat. They're like, at least I prayed to Allah. I mean, the whole world is a mess, so I'm good, But they felt that they were connected, right? And they were connected to true leadership that had their interests at heart, that had the agenda. And then what you'll find is that the men in the rank will share that same agenda with the Amir, right? And then what happens is he'll pass that same agenda down to his women folk that'll pass that down to the children, and you'll see you'll see Islam blossom. This is why, if you think about the four imams, the four Khalifas. Abu Bakr, his entire family was on board with the movement of Prophet Sallallahu. Umar ibn Khattab, all of his children and offspring, right? Umar ibn Abdulaziz is the grandson of Umar ibn Khattab, right? And how his mother got married, it was kind of interesting because Umar gave a fatwa when he was the Khalifa. He said that the people, you can't mix water in with the milk in order to stretch it, right? You got the pure, unadulterated, non-pasteurized milk, and then you have that one that's like a what do you call it? A condensed carnation milk in the can, and so on and so forth. You couldn't add water. Her mother used to add water into the milk, and she said, the daughter said, and Umar overheard her. The Amir said that we shouldn't mix water in with the milk. And her mother's response was like, you know how mothers be. I'm the Amir in this house, right? Don't tell me about no putting no water in the milk. Amir ain't here with us, right? But he actually happened to be close by and he overheard it. He questioned and told the mother, sent to the mother about, listen, this is what it is, and explain why. And then inquired about the daughter and married her to his son. All right. And that's Umar ibn Abdulaziz. So, even with agenda, our marriages have to have an agenda. A lot of times we have fairy tale ideas about marriage. I'm going to fall in love with the woman of my dreams and forever. And she's going to be so beautiful. Her hair going to be down to her ankles that I'm going to have to help her make wudu. At least those who are Maliki. Yeah, help her make wudu. You know what I'm saying? And all of that good stuff. We're going to live happily ever after and die in Medina. Right? But the reality is, sometimes you have to have an agenda. She may not be the best looking woman, or he may not be the best looking man. Remember the Sahaba named Julaybi. He wasn't that looking guy. He wasn't that good looking of a dude. He was actually don't quote me, correct me if I'm wrong, Malik. He was a dwarf, wasn't he? He was a dwarf. He's probably like 4 feet tall, right? And the family, because the Prophet ﷺ had told the family, like basically they thought the Prophet ﷺ was gonna marry their daughter, right? And once again, look at the resemblance. They thought her daughter was gonna marry the Prophet ﷺ. And he said, no, I have someone else in mind for her, right? And then he brought Juleibib, and the parents was like, can you just like give us a minute to like think about this right here? Does she have to marry him? And the daughter spoke up and said, if Rasulullah said I should marry him, then I'm going to marry him. You see the similarity with Umar's daughter, with his daughter-in-law? It's the same exact correlation there. So this is something that's important. So it has to be an agenda. So deen is a preservation of deen. What did the Prophet tell us? Women are married for 4 things, right? And he said what? On the last thing, he said, marry for deen. And he said, dust in the face of the one. Curse your marriage. Your marriage ain't no good unless you marry for deen. Right? Sometimes that's the problem why we having bad endings. With a lot of our relations. We're not married for deen. Especially if you meet on social media. Anyway. You can marry her for deen if she also. I'm not saying that you don't. But usually all them videos and stuff, brothers looking at that first before they even get to all the Islamic stuff. So anyway, deen, preservation of deen is something that's important. And that's first and foremost. Second thing is preservation of life. And this is why Allah Ta'ala prohibited suicide and he prohibited homicide. You can't just unjustly take someone's life. And you just can't take your own life. But however, under the guise of the Sharia, for sins that are considered capital punishment, like murder, like adultery, right? It's a capital punishment. It leads to death. So Allah Ta'ala made that a rule, because most people, when you listen to non-Muslims, when they talk about things like this, they'll say, oh, it's barbaric. This is crazy. They still throw stones and kill people that commit adultery and et cetera, et cetera. Adultery used to be prohibited. I think one state is still on the books. So you see, the Alabama or Mississippi is adultery still a crime in that state, but their legislation don't allow them to enforce anything. But it was once looked at. The third thing is preservation of wealth. You have a right to wealth. No one should be able to steal your wealth, your property, right? Islam puts sanction on that. You just can't, and Amir just can't tax you just because he want to tax you, right? What's the only tax that we got is zakat. Everybody knows about it. It's not hidden, not ambiguous. You can encourage to give sadaqah as he been given to you, and you even encourage, especially for the man that doesn't have much, you're encouraged to spend money on your family before you give to others, right? Take care of home, self-preservation. So we should take care of our Jamaat before we go take care of others as well. I'm not saying you don't help other people, but you look out for your own people first before you go and help everybody else. So preservation of wealth. Number 4, which is important as well, preservation of lineage, right? 1, we shouldn't attribute a child to a person that's not the parent of that child. 2, if you look at the whole adoption thing in Islam, you cannot basically erase or eradicate the father, right? He can be a bad dad all he wants. You can't eradicate it. That's that man's child, then that's that man's child, right? So preservation of lineage. The other thing, marriage, right? This is something that our children and offspring to begin to take that portion of Islam a bit more serious, right? When you read about, I'll tell you, I like reading a lot of history and stuff like that. So in West Africa, what was the practice, especially during the time of Sheikh Ahmed and Fodio? They would, once the child hit about 13, the girl particularly, the father would find someone to, be engaged to. If he was a little younger and he didn't have things, established for himself, of course, they would, delay the marriage until he was able to get himself together. If she married somebody, a little older, then, she would marry and provide the fact that the person was taking care of the person. But the overall point that I want to make is that at that age, at that teenage years, right? And that's when boys look at girls and girls will start looking at boys, right? Looking at each other. If they find, I usually find that if they were, and we're talking about an engaged setting, if they're engaged, it will cool them down from all of the other things. Sometimes it will cool a boy off. You know, how boys are hot headed, want to get in trouble. You're like, yo, man, you gonna mess things up. Sheikh Harun ain't gonna let you marry his daughter, man. You keep, so you gotta cool out, right? You have something that will, keep them focused, because a part of our with our problem with our young men, they don't have an agenda. They don't have a focus. Most of their focus is playing basketball, or getting a rap deal, or just growing up to become a 5-star OG at the next Blood Set or the Crips. That's really what our youth is facing. You do have some that has aspirations to becoming like, some sort of accomplished professional. I'm not saying that, but that number is minute, because you see more and more of our youth going towards that way. You're like, yo, you wasn't raised like that, but now they're starting to see the world differently than when they seen it growing up all that time, right? So preservation of lineage, right? At some point we have to say enough is enough. We have to begin to plant the principles in all of our children, so that we can, stop this senseless killing that's going on with our young. These kids are killing each other younger and younger, right? Like Philly last week, I was at the hospital afterwards, but it was a 2-year-old that got shot and killed by her cousin, right? But the boy he had intellectual disabilities, but kind of find out it was the grandmother's gun, and the gun wasn't a registered gun. It was stolen from South Carolina. So meaning somebody probably sold it to him on the street and called it in stolen. And the boy found it. He has some intellectual disabilities. He shot the little 2-year-old. So, this is the kind of stuff that, we're up against here. So lineage. Number 5, preservation of your intellect, your aql, right? Not only with just education, but preserving your intellect from intoxicants. That's something that's important. How many people you got? I know we got them here, because I've seen them in my whole lifetime. Where you got that guy that you always tag him as the crazy guy. He might be on the corner talking to himself, right? Usually, sometimes that guy was a professional, but he just took a bad trip on some drugs and never came back, right? And he's mentally incapacitated. And then also too, our youth are inspired to get stuck on, get strung out and stuck on drugs, which also stumps them intellectually as well. Some of them don't ever live up to that to their fullest capacity, because they're always high, right? So Islam put a prohibition on drugs, right? And what did Allah Ta'ala say about it? That it's the work of Shaitan, right? It keeps us fighting. It keeps anytime there's drugs, there's a fight somewhere not too far from it, right? So in other sins, open up with that. So this is what Islam came to protect us from. Islam has an agenda, right? It will protect us, and it serves us and helps us get to paradise, as Allah Ta'ala, has made it that way. So anyway, I just want to mention just a few ayats, and it's ayats pertaining to different things, but it will help us with our agenda. The first thing that you have to do is know, fa'alam annahu la ilaha illallah, right? Know that there's no God except Allah, right? Not just you learn it and know it with certainty. The thing which kills the believer, which kills the iman of a believer, which weakens his iman, is doubt, right? Doubt. And what do you mean by doubt? Not just doubting, you may be strong. I know there's only, the only true God is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, etc., right? Hold on a second. I meant to silence my phone the whole time. Excuse me. Otherwise, I'm gonna keep ringing. So that not only that, but what about the belief in Yawm al-Akhir, about that last day? What about that belief in the wazn al-a'mal, the weighing the actions? What about that belief connected to the sirat, that bridge that we're gonna have to cross over? What about that belief that's connected with paradise? What about that belief that's connected with hellfire? If you knew the descriptions of paradise, there's no way that you wouldn't want it. That's the reality. If you notice the description of paradise by reading the ayahs, by reading the hadith, and you can use your imagination on that. It's just when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't put any imagine, because our imagination is only going to imagine created things. But when Allah Ta'ala is telling you about paradise, that you'll be sitting on a plush bed in paradise. I mean, the Prophet says something describing that to you. You'll be on a plush bed, right? You'll have table spreads with food. You'll belch and it'll smell like musk, right? There'll be no more urination, no more menstruation, right? You're going to be handsome. You'll hold on and they're going to look good. All of these things. Oh, you can use the mind of that. Whoever you think of, right? Whoever you think of is going to be 70 times better than that, right? All of those things connected with paradise. You can use that imagination for that. Those things were connected to hellfire. You can use the imagination with that, and you have to firmly believe it. But not only just firmly believe it, meaning you're accepting it. Acceptance is just the beginning. If Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran that the skin will burn off in the fire, right? And it'll grow back to a new skin, and it'll burn off, and it'll grow back to a new skin, and this pain and agony is 70 times worse than any pain that you'll feel in this life, right? Think about it. If you was to take a lighter, I know we used to do this as kids. We used to put the lighter over our hand and see how long we could keep it there without moving, and immediately, as soon as you feel the pain, because the way that your body is set up, it's going to send off the sensors to the nerve for you to react to move your hand. Well, imagine being caught in a fire that you can't get out of. Now,
it's crazy you said that, right? Because I was at the gym the other day and I was in the sauna.
Uh-huh.
But it was like a good, like see how long you can bear. It was like 10, 15, 20. I said, I'm out of here. So
right.
Imagine eternity.
SubhanAllah, la ilaha illallah. But you can't get out of it. Imagine that. You stuck, right? So, these are the things. This is so having that and being certain about that you have to have firm belief in, to the point where you are worshiping Allah Ta'ala as though you are one of the people of the hellfire. That will just the thought of going to hell and no one to escape to get you out. Remember, you have the gatekeeper. There's an angel that's the cell block manager of hellfire. His name is Malik, right? They say Malik is very stern. Allah Ta'ala mentions him by name in the Quran. And what I'm telling you is mentioned in the Quran. I just keep forgetting what surah it is. I think it's Ahqaf. I can't remember. But anyway, Allah Ta'ala mentions him by name. Did this pop out? Yeah, this came out. I don't know where it go. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Nah. I don't know if it came back on yet. Okay, should be coming back. Okay, yeah, it's back. So anyway, so his name is Malik. And Malik, the people will be in the hellfire crying, right? There's a drink in hellfire too. People, the heat is so intense that it dehydrates you and you'll cry for a drink. But this drink, you don't get no satisfaction, no pleasure from. It's not like drinking Gatorade on a hot day, right? They said that you drink this drink, which is mixed up with some of the most nastiest things that you could think of in this dunya. They said it's like pus, menstruation blood, like all the nastiest things you can think of. And remember, paradise ain't like no Club Med. It's not going to the Cancun. You're not in Punta Cana. It's supposed to be nasty. And it's funny because those places, those resorts, they give you free food, but the only thing you got to pay for is drinks. They want you to get drunk. Some of them spots give you complimentary drinks. Think about that, right? Well, in paradise, you're going to get unlimited drink of that drink that's in the hellfire. And there's a particular tree that you eat from. The fruit is called a zaqqum, right? This fruit, and they said this fruit got like thorns in it, and when you eat it, now yet in your poor insides is done. So when you drink the drink is extremely hot, makes you more thirsty. It damages all your insides, and the food that you eat, it explodes in your insides, and all of it is put back together, and you'll do this and keep drinking and eating, and this will be your state, right? So when you think about it, is that sin really worth getting this for eternity? We cry when we got to go to jail for more than 5 years. Some people start telling at the thought of being in jail for 90 days. Like, you got 90 days where, no, I can't do 90 days, man. What's the first thing you start thinking about? And it's funny because the opposite of the day of judgment, you're not going to be thinking about them. But the first thing you think about when you get incarcerated, where's my lady? Where's my child? right? What about my mama? What about this? You start thinking about everything, right? Well, on that day on the Qiyamah, you're not be thinking of anything, any of them. Allah Ta'ala said that the mother will basically like throw the, get rid of the child. They're not worried about the child, right? So this is what is mentioned in the Quran. This was mentioned in the Quran. So you have to understand that. That's preservation of deen. Not only you didn't need the sciences, but this belief has to be preserved because this was the driving force, the motivating factor of us becoming Muslim, right? Because when people ask you, well, what made you become Muslim? Be honest with you, the best answer is, man, I don't want to go to hell. Be honest with them, right? If you want to give them dawah, you can say that, or you can tell them about how you don't believe, there's no other God except Allah, and be created a dialogue. But simple answer, I don't want to go to hell, man. I want to go to paradise. And then they'll probably be intrigued by that. What you mean by hell? Hell is what you make it. You know how people do. So, but anyway, you have to preserve. This is how you begin the beginning of preserving your Islam. So anyway, with this, you can only know Allah Azza wa Jalla by means of knowledge. The first surah was revealed. What was the first surah revealed? Everybody can say it. Iqra, read. Bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Right? In the name of your Lord, read. And what was the miracle? The Prophet ﷺ didn't know how to read script. Right? He wasn't a person that was able to read and write. So this is the miracle behind it. This is also another way you knew the Prophet ﷺ wasn't a liar, right? The illiterate man can't just come up with this idea by himself, right? So this here, your first station, and this is also a first trait of uprightness in Kisalat Istiqamah. Traits of uprightness is knowledge. You can't even make proper tawbah without knowledge because there's conditions that the tawbah. You can't make it properly. You can feel bad, remorseful, but there's steps that goes along with it. And I ain't just talking about doing 2 rakats because that's how it was told to me, but you could do 2 rakats and be empty on the inside and keep wondering why you keep committing the same sin because you never felt bad at the beginning with. You got to have that remorse. There's certain things that has to be done in order for that tawbah to even be valid. So this is something that's important. So Allah Ta'ala, he says, Fa'lam annahu la ilaha illallah. Right? Know that there's no God except Allah. Wastaghfiru li dhanbik. And seek forgiveness for your sins, right? From your sins. So once you know, think about what's that saying we say, when you know better, you do better. Think about it. You start knowing better, you start changing. And then when you change, what happens? You don't want the ignorance around you in your environment. Speaking of environment, think about it. Think about that hadith where the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned about Allah Ta'ala sending the angels to a particular area. And in that area, basically the residents there were riffraffs. They were like tearing up, cutting the fool, except this one family. Well, pious family. The angel went back to plead with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about destroying. They said, well, there's righteous people there. Allah Ta'ala said, destroy them with it. Why is that? Because they became complacent with all of the madness going on. See, your heart, not only does your heart have to embrace Tawheed, but also one of the things, once you embrace Tawheed, you know why tasawwuf is so important? Tasawwuf is so important to a person of Ahl Sunnah with regards to Aqidah. Tawheed, you learn about Allah, you learn about the messengers, and you learn about the afterlife. Tasawwuf is what polishes and cleanses the heart, where you become amazed with yourself, because you'll be so amazed with yourself, there'll be no room for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why people feel comfortable making a statement such as, we need an Islam for all people, right? Because you're that full of yourself. See, some of the sins of the heart, what you wipe away with the sins of the heart. And this is, even think about the order, the tartib that's mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith of Jibril, right? One narration of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ was asked by Jibril, Akhbirni ana iman, inform me what's iman. This came first in one narration of the hadith. In the next narration, Akhbirni ana Islam. That came first in another variation of the hadith. But either way you look at it, whether you put it first or second, the bottom line is it was asked of, and this is part of the essentials of Islam. So iman is first, right? You can't think about ihsan if you're full of yourself. You don't think that Allah Ta'ala is greater than you because you have that. People are full of themselves. Think about Fir'aun. Fir'aun wasn't a 5%er. He wasn't NOI. He was Pharaoh. He said, and Pharaoh had to believe like Allah was in a space or a place. That's why he said, build me a tower so I can go meet this Allah. Like basically, I'm gonna go tell him something, right? Like he the neighborhood bully. I'm gonna go beat him up, watch them, show him. I'm showing where we from, right? No, right? So the heart has to be pure. You can't be full of yourself. And when you're amazed with yourself, you become conceited and you're arrogant. And if arrogance, and you know what happens with arrogant people, you have two arrogant people in the same. Let a very arrogant, pompous individual be next to another arrogant, pompous individual. It's going to be the war of hatred. They're going to hate each other, and that's what's spewing between people. People do it with tribes. They do it with gangs. You know, my tribe is better than your tribe. His tribe better than his tribe. My tribe tougher than your tribe. What does Shaitan say? And I said, minhu, I'm better than him. And he's condemned to hellfire. So you have to be careful. And there's a lot of things that spewing our animosity towards each other, meaning the members of humanity is spewing it. Yeah, men that hate women, women hate men. Yo, I'm a girl because I hate boys, and I'm a boy because I hate girls. But meanwhile, now you're denying what Allah Ta'ala created you as. No, there was a mistake. Right? I'm gonna change my birth certificate. I'm gonna have a surgery and I'm gonna make myself. The whole thing about the Dajjalic time, which we're living in now, is the ability. The Dajjal will literally have the ability. The physical Dajjal is here. He has the ability to make fire look like water and water look like fire. Right? We're already being prepped. If you find yourself talking to someone that's a transmissioner, that's what I call it. It's that transgender transmissioner, right? If you find yourself talking to somebody as a transmissioner and you refer to them as he's a he, and you refer to him as a she, you better change that before the Dajjal reach you. Because that's already prepping you to embrace his magic. His magic. The Dajjal, Allah Ta'ala, the same thing. Like, one of the things that hurt us a lot is some people, we don't believe in the miracles of the prophets, right? We don't accept the mu'jizat of the awliya, right? Meaning that they're able to do miracles. So this is the thing. Understand this. There's karama, which is attributed to the prophets. There's mu'jizat that's attributed to an extremely righteous person. And then there's istiraj, right? That's to evil people, right? Now, karama, like I said, is for the prophets and messengers. And it's a proof that they're following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? The mu'jizat of the awliya, their form of miracles is a sign that they are following the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The istiraj is an evil liar. That's the person that can perform them type of things. And the Dajjal, he'll have one actual action that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned about, and this is also how we know that Khidr is alive. If you don't know who Khidr is, read Surah Al-Kahf with Musa. He was a companion of Musa, and he was the man that was corrected. He was doing things and had Musa reacting, right? Like, yo, why'd you just kill that little kid, right? He's like, I got a knowledge that you don't know yet, right? You just hold on, just wait, young buck. You jumping the gun, right? And he did those things. Well, Khidr is that same person. They say he's alive now, right? Well, when the Dajjal is here, and this is also another reason why it's important to learn your Aqidah, and know that Allah Ta'ala, whatever comes to your mind, know that Allah Ta'ala is not that, right? In simple terms. You can't possibly think that anything that Allah Ta'ala resembles creation in any way. So Khidr, the Dajjal, will kill a man. This is how it's narrated, the hadith. He'll kill a man and bring him back to life. He'll kill him, take his life. People are like, oh, and he bring him back to life. People will start testifying that the Dajjal is God, right? They say even those who claim to be Muslim will be present. And we're like, yo, he must be Allah. Right? Because deep down inside, if you look at all of the other religions, their God is a created being. They have some sort of image. You got the white Jesus. If you're black, you're a black Christian. You pro-black Christian. You got the black Jesus with dreadlocks, right? They got a Chinese Jesus. I even seen a picture of a Chinese Jesus. Everybody got their Jesus. If you're Mexican, you got Jesus, right? So, everybody got their image of their God. You got Buddha and all of them, right? Except the Muslims. We don't attribute physical or human qualities to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But however, people will be mesmerized that the Dajjal killed the man and had the ability to bring him back to life. And Kidder will get up and he'll say in front of everyone, this man is a liar. Allah Ta'ala is the one who causes life and gives death. And that is true, right? If you don't believe it, I got a friend that was shot in the head, had his head blown, his piece of his head blown off. He's still alive to this day and functioning normal. I don't know why a dude came to my door, but that's another story. He came right to my house. Yo, they just shot me. This ain't the ER, bro. Get out of here for this junk of a crime scene. I couldn't understand why he came to my house. But anyway, I wasn't even Muslim at the time either. So it wasn't like, yo, say your shot. Right. Like, yo, I don't know what you're going to do. You go to the hospital. But anyway, it's happening right now. You're seeing it. We witness life and death every day. Shootouts going on. Malls. It ain't happening in the hood no more. It's happening in grocery stores, the malls, the tire shop, hair salons. It's just everywhere now. This thing is like spreading worse than COVID, right? Bullets. So anyway, you have to know, as a Muslim, we have to know we can't fall victim to that influence of the Dajjal. So preservation of deen is something that's extremely important for us. And we have to know that. So wastaghfiru li dhanbik, right? And ask Allah Ta'ala for forgiveness. And this is how important brotherhood is. We don't take it serious enough. Walil mu'minina wal mu'minat, and the believing men and the women and the believing women, right? So don't just think of yourself, but also think of your brother as well. When you're asking Allah to forgive you, make it a habit of praying for the people in your Jamaat, your family, your wife, husband, grandma, all of those people. Ask Allah Ta'ala to forgive them, right? Make it a habit. And then Allah Ta'ala, he says, Wallahu ya'lamu mutaqallabakum wa mathwaakum, right? Allah Ta'ala, he says after that, Allah Ta'ala knows about your moving about. Muqallabukum, right? It's the same word of color, the heart, right? And it's called the heart because the heart is constantly changing, swinging, right? Always beating, right? On an anatomy, a physiology, a physiological aspect is beating and pumping blood and those things of that nature, but it's constantly turning. Our heart is always the thing. That's why you have to protect it. The eyes is the window to the heart, right? The ears is how the heart is swayed. How do you think you move by music, right? A lot of music, when you listen to music, a lot of us, we love music, right? And a lot of music that you listen to, it puts you in a state what psychologists call it, be trauma bonded, right? You ever listen to a song, and that song, you be like, yo, this is my life. Wallahi, this is my life. This is my joint. That's why I love it. You turn it up real loud. You start dancing. Sometimes you start crying behind the lyrics. You just can't stop moving because you're trauma bonded. Somebody talking about growing up. Biggie Smalls my era, right? So I could just quote that whole album, Ready to Die, to you right now like it was a Sora, right? But there was things he said in there I could relate to. Like, yeah, man, I'm feeling that. I know that. That's how I could tell you personal experience. Ain't nothing but trauma bonded. Right? So what? We had to pluck roaches out the cereal box. I can embrace that now. I couldn't do that back then. I'm hungry, man. You don't understand. That was my mantra back in the day. I wanted to do something wrong. All I had to remember, we ain't got no food. My mama ain't got it like that. That's all you gotta tell yourself. And oftentimes we find ourselves doing that. And so then instead of us seeing the good that Allah Ta'ala provided for us, we may not have had a lot, but we wasn't going out days and days without eating. Right? We start denying Allah Ta'ala. And some people use that as a reason of why they commit kufr. I ain't doing nothing because God didn't hear me when I was crying at night, when I was hungry. Right? Those type of things. Trauma bonding. Right? So you rather listen to music versus hearing the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But anyway, and then I want to mention one more ayat, and then inshallah I'll stop. Or should I mention two? No, I'll mention one because I've been talking long enough, mashallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells you in the Quran, Utlu ma أوحي إليك من الكتاب وأقيموا الصلاة وأقيموا الصلاة. Right? Allah Ta'ala tells you in it, recite what has been revealed to you of the Quran, of the book, right? So it's an indicator. He's speaking, the Prophet Sallallahu recite, what has been revealed to you. This is also for us to go out and give dawah, call people to the book of Allah, right? So it's not just about you just taking shahada as long as I get my 5 in. I don't care what nobody else. No, you have an obligation. Go out, recite the book. Teach it. Because reciting, you're not just reciting. You got to teach other people how to recite. If you know Arabic and you know the rules of Tajweed, then you have to teach other people to recite. Reason why it don't take off like that in our community, because usually that person that knows the rules, how to recite good and all those things, they usually keep it to themselves and accuse everyone else that they don't want to learn. But you ain't never even offered your services. So this is something that is a phenomenal in today's time. That we have happening. People are, you don't never learn how to recite the book of Allah. You don't recite right. We have an obligation to teach. Not only teaching how to recite, but also teach understanding. If you learn fiqh, if you learn tafsir, if you learn any of those sciences of the Quran, teach it to the people. Give it to them, right? You're not going to be the end all be all teacher. You may just that may be just your thing. They got to go learn fiqh with Sheikh over here and may learn hadith with Sheikh over here. But the bottom line is, if Allah Ta'ala blessed you to learn a particular thing and know a thing, teach it. All right? And you stop where your knowledge stops at. So recite what has been revealed to you, right? From the Quran, from the Kitab. Wa aqimu salat, and establish the prayer. Sheikh Abdullahi Danfodio to Qadam Allah bi rahmati Amir. He mentioned one thing about the word when it's mentioned iqama or aqimu, right? About the prayer, about that statement. We understand it in English as established. He says now it's just established. With the establishment entails wudu, your tahara, putting on the proper clothing, facing the qibla, all of those things that will make the prayer valid. While aqimu salat, you can't just pray just any old type of way. There's rules and order to how you pray. Right? Wa inna salati tanha anan fahsha, and that the prayer it prevents you from fahsha, right? Fahsha meaning every type of sin, illegal intercourse, things of that nature. If you are a person that is a perpetual, engulfed in sin, your middle name should have been sin, right? If you're that person, check your salat. Something's wrong with your prayer. But this is what Allah Ta'ala is telling you. That the salat prohibits you from that. It's something wrong with you. Like if you're a person that suffers through chronic waswas, right? One of the things along with reciting is keep wudu. Keep fresh wudu. Always renew your wudu. So, don't never walk around without wudu. Some of our problems that we have, you're a person, you have a lot of nightmares at night. Recite the last 3 kuls. Recite ayatul kursi before you go to sleep. Though 1, 2, 3, 4. Those 4 things, it'll protect you throughout your sleep. Right? But we neglect those things. The Prophet gave it to us for a reason. Right? So these things, stop dilly-dallying, spend a lot of time in the bathroom. Right? A lot of your confusion, your madness comes in the bathroom. If you're a person that's always committing sins on your phone, guess where your place is that you spend the most time committing them sins? Usually the bathroom. Right? You gotta leave the bathroom. Leave your phone outside the bathroom if you want to be. The bathroom, I know is a made-up name, but we used to call it, in prison, we used to call it the jinn bay. Right? That's the jinn house. It is the house. Because think about it. The dua that you make before you go into the bathroom. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubthi wa khaba'ith. Right? Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from the male and the female jinn. Protect me from them. It said a gender too. Khubthi wa khaba'ith. The male and the female. You seeking Allah's protection. And it got to be bad in there, because what's the dua you say if you come out? Gafranaka, Allah pardon us. It's bad in there, right? So anyway, then Allah Ta'ala, he says in the same ayat, after saying, inna salati tanha anan fahsha'i wa munkar. And munkar is, they say that the scholars of tafsir says that munkar is disbelief and innovation and every wicked deed. Fahsha is those sins, And munkar is great big, wicked stuff. Like, and the greatest of it is kufr, commit kufr. And he says, وَلِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَأَكْبَرُ, right? And remember Allah Ta'ala, and remember that Allah Ta'ala is greater, right? Indeed, is greater than you, right? Wallahu ya'lamu ma tasna'un. And remember, Allah Ta'ala is well acquainted and aware of what you're doing, right? So we'll stop there. But that Islamic agenda, remember, and review those things. Islam came to protect those 5 things, right? And that agenda, the beginning of your affair and your agenda is knowledge. Knowledge will help you understand. Not only just La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah is the kalima that brings you into Islam, but it is the actions. All of your actions is associated to that statement, those 2 phrases, right? When you take time out to pray, that's, especially when you're at work. La ilaha illallah. There's no God except Allah. I have to take this time out to pray. And you're showing them. You're not just saying it, right? And we were talking about this in a class on my show. He was quoting that preacher. Y'all seen that video of that preacher? It was a little viral. He said he was in a taxi. And the Muslim was driving, right? The Muslim pulled over the taxi, got out, made wudu, and made salat. So he was like, man, this dude praying. And he said he went back to church. And he said, I ain't gonna let no Muslim out pray to me. They pull over and pray anyway. We gonna pray. And he was going on, right? And ranting and raving. So, but anyway, my case in point is, that action is also part of that kalima, is also part of that statement as well. So our actions, remember, people will see you before they hear you. They'll hear you after the fact, but they see you before they actually hear you. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Any comments or questions or add-ins, inshallah. We can entertain that now, but I'm pretty much done, mashallah. We got some food over there.
Yeah, so
I'm gonna end the live now, inshallah. I got it online. I'm making some comments and questions.
So we're at the point of where, if anyone have any questions, we're going to take those now.